As I mentioned earlier, you actually first attended community college at SMC, Santa Monica College, before transferring to Berkeley. Can you share with my students who are also community college students, what are some tips on how to successfully transition from a community college into a top four-year university, such as Berkeley? I ask you this because I noticed while some of my community college students do well, like yourself, others unfortunately struggle big time once they transfer to a elite four-year university.
Definitely. And it is a struggle, to say the least, but it's definitely doable for anybody, I truly believe. And to kind of elaborate on that, you, Professor Liu, were a very strong help for me. And I think what was a big benefit for me was because getting advice from you when I transferred into Berkeley, and I don't know if you remember, but I was kind of debating whether I was going to go to UCLA or Berkeley. And you said, wherever you end up going to, recruiting is going to start off immediately. So once you transfer, I remember that when I got to Berkeley, before classes had even started, I was going into the career office to try to find out where career fairs, that kind of stuff were going to be taking place. And they don't make it easy on you, especially as a transfer student. Before you're like officially a student, it's really hard to really know where these things are. And if you're not a Haas student or a business student, there's a little bit less resource available. So getting on Facebook, reaching out to other people, and really just making sure that if you have an idea of what you want to do, I think it makes it a lot easier. But academically, I think there's a struggle with trying to balance these two things, because you're at a bit of a disadvantage as a transfer student opposed to a four-year student, because four-year students, they've been thinking about their career from the time they were a freshman, versus as a community college student, you're thinking about getting into your next school. You're not thinking about like your job quite yet. So then you get into wherever the college that you get into, and now immediately you're a junior and you need to start thinking about your career. So I've noticed a lot of the people that I transferred in with, they didn't necessarily start looking until their senior year. And I think getting an early start is the best bet. And I think it's a lot easier to know what you don't want to do than what you do want to do. So the sooner you start talking to people in different industries, whether it's, tax, audit, or maybe something outside of public accounting, the sooner the more people you talk to, the more people that you connect with, that's going to help you in two ways. It's going to help you, one, realize what you don't want to do and maybe what you do want to do. And it's also going to build those connections for you, which are going to be invaluable to when you actually, do try to go out for these positions. So for myself, when I was going out for positions, I connected with several people at EY in the tax department. These were people that I met with several times and had coffee with. And that's something I'd also, say, definitely reach out to people, meet for coffee, but there's a balance. You don't want to do too much of that. And you do want to focus on your academics, because it's a steep curve of learning when you transfer from a community college to a four-year university, where you don't want to focus too much on just finding a job, but you do want to make sure you're taking the time to make sure your grades aren't slipping, because there is a step up in the amount of time that you'll have to put in going from a community college to a four-year university.
I never asked you this before, but what made you want to go into accounting, or more specifically, taxation? Was it your Principles of Accounting 1 class, My Accounting 2 class? Was it the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program that got you to try out? Was it your part-time job with Professor Ron Fitzgerald from Santa Monica College, or was it a combination? I'm just really curious.
Definitely. So yeah, it was actually a combination of several things, but the original motivation, I think, started from when I was taking your class. And so I was initially trying to go into an economics major at either UCLA or Berkeley, and the accounting classes were a major requirement to transfer. So that's initially why I was taking accounting courses. I took accounting 1, wasn't crazy about it. Then I took your class, and I somewhat fell in love with particularly the managerial accounting side. And you kind of planted the seed in my head that public accounting would be a good initial job trajectory for me. And kind of, I remember you saying that you could do marketing now, but then you can't switch into accounting later, but you could do accounting now and then you could potentially do marketing later. And the accounting being a department that's it's not expendable based on business cycles or seasonality. You're always going to have a job at the very least, and it's a good foot in the door to the business world in general. So I mean, that kind of started it. And then from there, obviously I did the VITA program with you, and I worked at the small CPA firm in the Palisades with Ron Fitzgerald. That kind of built my my base for wanting to do accounting and maybe to do tax in the future. But when I transferred to Berkeley and before I entered at EY, which I don't think we mentioned, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do audit or tax. And I spoke to, like I was mentioning before, I spoke to a lot of different professionals in audit, in tax, and kind of got a feel for what the differences are between audit and tax as far as the work itself, the day-to-day that comes along with it, and then the exit opportunities. And those were the three main things that I considered. And to kind of elaborate on that, and I know this is a long-winded answer, the difference between audit and tax being when you're doing audits, to put it very simply, and of course I'm a tax person, so I'm going to simplify this even more so than it should be. You're testing financial statements to see that to make sure that they're not within a material misstatement, so that you can then sign off on those financial statements and release them to the public, so that the investor community can have assurance that these companies are reporting correctly. So essentially, you're checking the work of these companies. You're, that kind of thing. And in tax, you're providing value to your clients by helping them reduce their tax liabilities, that sort of thing. So that's the difference in work. The difference in day-to-day being, what I was told coming into the job was that in tax, typically you're going to be more in the office, you're going to be more at your desk kind of thing. You can kind of work a little bit more individually, whereas an audit, you're going to be more in a group environment. You're going to be working always with a team. You're going to have bigger clients. You're going to typically be on client site and potentially traveling a little bit more. And then the exit opportunities, to me, it was just more aligned. What I thought would be more in alignment with what I would want to do down the road. I thought that, going the tax route would just be better for me. So that was kind of more of a personal choice.
Well, last question. Like most of the guests I invite to come speak on my YouTube channel, you had to actually overcome a lot of adversity in your life to get to where you are today. I think you mentioned to me before, you were just raised by your mom and had to work to pay your way through school. Can you share with my viewers your top 3 tips for success for working at EY, or perhaps life in general?
Definitely. I'll give 3 tips. I don't know if these are my top 3 for life, but I'll give 3 good ones, I think. One being to always remain open to new opportunities. So I think for myself, if just because you think you want to do something now, it might not make sense in the future. So to constantly be open to different opportunities, and that kind of is a good segue into my second tip, which is to be open to meeting new people. And I think that's something that it's hard to do, especially now with everything post-COVID or in this new normal world that we live in. It's become harder and harder to connect with people. So taking the time to learn about people and not just what they do for work, to me, that's something that I feel has gotten me very far in my career and in life. And then the third one, I think a good tip for success would be to mind your own business, in the sense that it's easy to look at what other people are doing and want to be doing that. Being confident in what you're doing and minding your own business is definitely going to get you far.
Well, thanks for the tips. And on the second tip, where you mentioned about getting to know people, I mean, that brings me back to what we said earlier, what I said earlier about you, right? Like, if there's one word to describe you, Jake, it's that I don't use this word lightly, right? I don't think I've ever used this for any other student. I mean, you're definitely like one of the most inclusive people I ever met, because you actually genuinely want to get to know people and have a relationship, right? So, I mean, that's obviously, it's just in your nature. Yeah, and it's taken you, far in life, right? And it's giving you great success. So, I mean, that's just fantastic. Well, Jake, I really appreciate you making the time to do this video with me. I know you're super busy at EY, and I'd like to just conclude by saying, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It was an absolute pleasure being your former professor, and I'm extremely happy to see your continued success after college. And lastly, I hope we can still continue to stay in touch, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the near future.
Definitely. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Professor Liu.